Hello there, people of the internet. This is a predictive video on the cost of military surplus firearms going down in price. So, before you guys go typing in the comments talking about supply and demand, reasons why they're so high, etc., hear out what I have to say, and maybe you'll be able to make some conclusive decisions, because I think I've got a rather decent point here. So, we live in very uncertain times. With us living in these uncertain times, people are a little afraid of what is going to happen in the future, especially the near future, especially with media and propaganda here inside the United States trying to ensue as much panic over the population as possible. Now, back in the day, this right here was one of the main causes that actually increased the price dramatically of military surplus firearms. Let's rewind to about a decade ago, maybe a little bit longer, where there was some serious panic over what the government might do whenever it comes to firearms confiscations, and that made people panic and go out and buy as many firearms as physically possible. Well, with everybody buying as many firearms as physically possible, a lot of these military surplus firearms were bought for really, really dirt cheap. It was discovered how good they were, and then the demand on them absolutely skyrocketed, and, well, we kind of see the results. Demand went up, supply kind of flatlined and stayed where it's at, especially with sanctions and whatnot. Things can't get imported into the country now. And as a result of that, the market kind of stabilized as basically the surplus dried up, and all these are now being sold basically on the private market. There is some exceptions, but basically on the private market, and it's all a matter of what someone's willing to pay now, and a lot of people are charging way higher prices than what they should for these military surplus firearms, just because people are actually paying the prices for those military surplus firearms. Okay, so back then, these right here were a viable option for people to go out and panic buy and just absolutely stockpile because they were not very expensive. Now, fast forward to today, where, this is, 12, 13, 14, maybe 15 years later, after the absolute raise in military surplus prices, and people are no longer going out to panic buy these. These have raised in price to the point to where you can go out and get yourself a modern, much more practical firearm, like, say, an AR or an AK, chambered in an intermediate cartridge that's self-loading, that it's just a much better option, has rails for optics and mounts, and you can go ahead and stick on flashlights or lasers or anything like that. Just things that you can't do with these old school wood bolt action rifles. Now, if you do want to go out and get yourself one of these for practical purposes, go for it. I'm not telling you not to. I'm saying that for the price point that you're spending on these, you could get yourself a modern setup that would actually be rather decent. Modern manufacturing, with what we're seeing nowadays, is significantly better than what it was, even 15 years ago. And it's good enough to the point to where you can go out and get yourself like a modern AR for less money than an old school military surplus rifle. These are definitely turning into a collector's niche. So we're losing that demand that was created based off of panic buying and whatnot, because if somebody's going to go out there and panic buy a firearm, why would they spend $400 on a Mauser when they can go out and spend $400 on an AR that has, 223, 5.56 versus something like 8mm, which is significantly harder to find in the United States. So the demand is dramatically dropping. We see that already. I mean, a lot of new gun owners in the United States right now, they're not going after the old school military surplus guns. They went out and they bought ARs and Glocks and firearms of that nature because they're afraid. They're going out and they're panic buying, and they want to get the best possible thing that they can get for the amount of money that they're going to spend. And the amount of money that you're going to spend, this is not the best possible thing that you're going to get. You're going to go out and get yourself something much more practical, much more modern, uses modern ammunition that is available and on the market by the absolute monster truckload. So that's what people are going to go out and get. We no longer have the panic buying military surplus guns. So like I said, we're going to see that decline in demand. With that decline in demand and the modern manufacturing, modern, more practical things being sold off for cheaper than the surplus market is selling off their firearms, well, that demand's not there. So the surplus market's not going to see people buying nearly as many military surplus guns at those prices, and they're going to be forced to drop their prices. I don't care if it is the private market. If you put out a Mosin for $400, you know, and this was, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, people are going to probably pay that $400 for that Mosin because, hey, guess what? There's what they were wanting. But nowadays, they're wanting ARs and Glocks because the prices on ARs and Glocks and firearms of that nature have dropped to the point to where the people can afford those. The demand is shifting towards those because the price point has gotten to the point to where people can actually viably afford those things, so they don't have to rely on old school firearms. So with that shift in demand and the decrease of those prices, these prices will have absolutely no choice but to decrease as well. So there is the supply issue. We're not getting any more of these into the country, not unless some sanctions lift or some cache of these are found somewhere or something happens, but I wouldn't hold my breath with it. But even though the supply is not raising, at least not by any real significant amount, the demand on them is going to drop significantly. That is my prediction, especially as we get into the upcoming years of more and more controversy all around the world. We got people coming into the U.S. Eventually, we're going to have terrorists and sleeper cells that have just kind of been immigrated into the country illegally and under everybody's radar. These people are going to step up and be like, hey, guess what? It's time. And the American population knows that. A lot of people are panic buying a lot of different arms to face up against foreign countries and to face up potentially against domestic enemies that might pop up in the future. Lots of unrest going on right now, and nobody's going to want to show up to that unrest situation armed with a Mosin. That's why the demand on these is dramatically dropping down in comparison to something like the AR and the AK, especially with the price points. Anyway, folks, thanks for watching. Appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Gary. Shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.